Most people will never know this, but for over a century, an invisible system has been quietly siphoning wealth from ordinary citizens, governments, and entire nations. Billions, then trillions, of dollars vanish into shadowed corridors of power. This is not a story of petty theft. This is the largest financial heist in human history, and it is still running today. Every crash, every bailout, every financial crisis follows a pattern. Every single one benefits the few at the expense of the many. Most people will never see the hands orchestrating it, but they are always there. Most people will never know this, because the narrative presented on television, in newspapers, and across social media frames crises as accidents, mistakes, or the failure of individuals. Banks fail. Markets tumble. Governments scramble. They call it economic correction or market forces. They never show you the mechanism. Hear us. What they done want you to see every major financial crisis has been designed, or at the very least, exploited, by elite institutions. The Federal Reserve, the World Bank, the IMF, and a handful of global banks have repeatedly turned chaos into profit. This is still happening today, and the scale is far beyond what most people can imagine. The story begins in the early 20th century. In 1913, the Federal Reserve was established under the guise of stabilizing the U.S. economy. Most people will never know this, but the Fed was not a federal institution. It was a private network of banks designed to control the money supply and influence government policy. During the Great Depression, millions of Americans lost homes, savings, and livelihoods. Banks survived. Wealth shifted upward. Here's what they don't want you to see: the Federal Reserve manipulated interest rates, credit flows, and public policy to ensure institutions survived, while citizens suffered. This is still happening today, and the template has been repeated countless times. Fast forward to 1971. Nixon ended the gold standard. Fiat money was unleashed. Debt became the engine of wealth extraction. Most people will never know this, but this was no neutral policy. It allowed central banks to print unlimited money, governments to borrow endlessly, and financiers to profit enormously, while ordinary citizens bore the long-term consequences. In 2008, the pattern repeated. Housing markets collapsed. Millions lost wealth. Trillions flowed to banks and asset managers through bailouts. Hedge funds profited from foreclosures. Here's what they don't want you to see. Every crash, every bubble, every recovery is engineered or exploited to transfer wealth upward. This is still happening today, and the instruments are more sophisticated than ever. Consider the modern mechanisms. Central banks, under the guise of quantitative easing, print money that inflates assets, stocks, bonds, real estate while wages stagnate. Most people will never know this, but the average citizen's wealth is slowly diluted. While investment banks and the ultra-wealthy gain hundreds of billions in paper gains, private equity, shadow banking, and derivatives allow massive profits with minimal risk. Here's what they don't want you to see during crises. Governments create policies that protect these elites: low-interest bailouts, asset purchases, and regulatory loopholes. This is still happening today, and it is more aggressive than ever. Global examples reinforce the pattern. In Greece during 2010, the IMF and European Central Bank imposed austerity, while debt was restructured to favor foreign banks. Most people will never know this, but the country's citizens lost pensions, jobs, and infrastructure, while banks were fully repaid. In the United States, the 2020 pandemic triggered trillions in stimulus. Small businesses suffered. Big banks and corporations were shielded. Hedge funds manipulated stock surges. Here's what they don't want you to see. The crises are not random. They are opportunities carefully orchestrated. This is still happening today, with each new event amplifying the heist. The tools of control are evolving. Central bank digital currencies, programmable money, and real-time payment systems give financial institutions unprecedented oversight. Most people will never know this, but your spending, savings, and investments can now be tracked, restricted, or manipulated by algorithms in ways that were impossible decades ago. Hear us, what they don't want you to see. Digital finance is the next frontier of wealth extraction. This is still happening today, and the first moves are already underway in Europe, China, and the US. Look at the 2025 to 2026 timeline. Inflation, interest rate adjustments, and government debt strategies are not mistakes. January 2026. Major central banks finalize policies that allow for real-time tracking of transactions and automated interventions in markets. March 2026. Legislation quietly passes to allow banks to limit cash availability, citing fraud prevention and efficiency. June 2026. Corporate bailouts and stimulus are pre-approved under the guise of economic stability, again favoring institutions over individuals. September 2026. Digital currency pilots and programmable assets expand. Most people will never know this, but every move is orchestrated to protect elite wealth and maintain the system. This is still happening today, and the implications are massive. The heist also operates through debt. Sovereign debt is a tool. Nations borrow endlessly, often from institutions that profit from interest while holding power over policy. Greece, Italy, and Argentina are textbook examples. Most people will never know this, but when countries default, banks restructure debt in ways that shift control and keep the population under financial pressure. This is still happening today, and the same system is silently applied to the United States through rising national debt, derivatives, and the hidden leverage of the Federal Reserve. Derivatives and shadow banking amplify the heist. Trillions of dollars in bets on the value of stocks, bonds, and currencies create massive risk for citizens, while institutions hedge for guaranteed profit. Most people will never know this, but your retirement funds, pensions, and savings are indirectly entangled in these shadow systems. Here's what they don't want you to see, even when markets appear stable. Billions are being transferred behind the scenes. This is still happening today, and the cycle will repeat with increasing severity. By 2027, cash withdrawals and traditional banking are restricted under new regulations. By 2028, digital wallets, central bank-backed cryptocurrencies, and programmable money dominate major economies. Cash becomes inconvenient, expensive, and socially discouraged. Most people will never know this, but the infrastructure to control every transaction will be complete. This is still happening today, and it will fundamentally shift the balance of power between citizens and institutions. By 2029, multinational corporations partner with governments, integrating loyalty programs, payment platforms, and supply chains with digital currency ecosystems. Physical cash disappears from most large transactions. Black markets shrink. Street-level payments are tracked. Governments can enforce monetary behavior in ways never before possible. Most people will never know this, but the final pieces are being put in place. This is still happening today, and when 2030 arrives, cash as we know it will be all but obsolete in developed nations. The consequences are profound. Who wins? Banks, central authorities, and corporations that can track and influence spending. Who loses? Ordinary citizens, small businesses, anyone who relies on privacy or autonomy in financial decisions. Most people will never know this, but with every step toward a cashless and controlled financial system, the ability to resist disappears. This is still happening today, and the coming years will decide how much control individuals retain over their wealth and daily lives. The warning is clear. Study the cycles, understand the mechanisms, and recognize the players. Financial literacy and vigilance are more critical than ever. Most people will never know this, but knowledge is the first weapon against the greatest heist in human history. Here is what they don't want you to see. The game has been running for over a century, and the rules are hidden. This is still happening today, and ignoring it ensures you are a participant in the transfer of wealth, whether you realize it or not. If this video woke you up, drop a like and subscribe. New forbidden truth every single day. Turn on notifications. One might save your wealth. Comment the one thing you're doing right now to prepare. I read every single one.